Novice, and this is a Q&A by me, Truthslayer. Hello everybody. I'm sure everyone's jumping and jumping for joy. As always, if you have something that you would like me to answer, if you have a question for me, please send it my way. All that I ask is you try to keep it as short as possible. You keep it to one question, and please don't ask things that would be in a video in and of themselves, i.e., how would I book WrestleMania? That is a video in and of itself. Don't ask stuff like that, please. You know, not trying to be a dick about it, but come on. Or, you know, that's an overly involved question that would take an entire video to answer. I want to answer as many questions as I can on a video, so not stuff like that. So, anyways, let me begin here, and, okay. I'm not sure what RVD is up to, but is it worth it financially to bring RVD in for a one-time appearance, particularly at the Hammerstein Ballroom? The timing would be great because Jerry Lynn is hot right now, and the Hammerstein is where they had their last ECW pay-per-view match. There's a lot of people that want to see this in ROH. There's a lot of people. There's actually, I believe, a petition on the ROH message board, which I'll talk about the message board again later. Oddly enough, about this, people do want to see this, and I would, for one, want to see it too. I think it would be worth it financially, and just not only that, but a big thank you to the fans as well, and would make a lot of sense. So there you go. Hey, Truthslayer, do you think that it would be a smart decision for an upstart company to spend a lot of money to get people like Rob Van Dam and Paul Heyman, Sabu, Bobby Lashley? Can't get Bobby Lashley, he's in freaking MMA now. D'Lo Brown, Kenny Dykstra, Nick Dinsmore, or let's see, Shannon Moore, Elijah Burke, Paul London, Lance Cade, the Bashams, and the Highlanders on one roster. Since most of these guys are good wrestlers, some are great, but still have star power. Probably. I mean, I'll be honest. Most of these guys I already think should probably be either in Ring of Honor or TNA. You know, I don't understand them. You know, particularly guys like Shannon Moore, Kenny Dykstra, Elijah Burke, Paul London. Well, not Paul London, but yeah, well, Paul London. You know, Lance Cade. Lance Cade's another guy that you would think would be there too, particularly since he has size and a good look. But you know, there's lots of these guys. You know, and some of these guys should probably, like I said, should already be in TNA and Ring of Honor. I don't know if it'd be a good financial decision. I mean, if you had a TV deal already set up, it probably wouldn't. Those would be the guys you probably want to go after among other guys, but as a good start. So, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I'm just not too sure it would work. Anyways. What 3 or 5 ROH shows, besides including the ones you've listed on your profile page, would a relative novice to the organization want to see purchase? I'm planning on going to the ROH Wrestlemania weekend shows and would like a better sense of the promotion. First of all, I would say the Koch DVDs, which you can get at Best Buy, Amazon, that sort of thing. As far as just actual shows, you probably want the more recent shows, so I would say, let's see, French Connection, Bound by Hate, any of the pay-per-views, I would say, and also, apparently Final Battle 08 was extremely good, so I would say that as well, and that just came out, so I've not seen it yet, so I cannot say how good it is, but apparently it is amazing, so those would be the shows I would say. Let's see, Truthslayer, I've heard you constantly talk about Mistico and how he is probably the most over guy in the entire wrestling industry. My question is, what makes him so over, and will we ever see him in the WWE or TNA? I would imagine if we were to see him anywhere, it would probably be TNA, as he wrestles for AAA, and AAA and TNA do have a working relationship. I am shocked and surprised we have not seen him in TNA already. The reason why he's the most over guy is because he's the most over guy probably in Mexico right now. And the biggest draw in Mexico by himself, to the point where he has been brought in by New Japan, and was very over in Japan actually. He is mad over, and that's why I would call him the most over guy. He's the biggest draw in pro wrestling. That's why it's him or Cena. And I believe last year he did draw better than Cena. So there you go. Or at least I shouldn't say last year. I would say I think it's the last 5 years he's drawn better than Cena. So there you go. I was watching one of your older vids, and I saw that when reviewing No Mercy 2007, when Orton won the WWE title twice in one night, you said that you weren't a fan of Orton. I was just wondering how your opinion has changed, if it has, over the last year or so, considering his slight character change and becoming a #1 heel in pro wrestling today. Actually, it had nothing to do with any of that. What it had to do with at the time, it was the fact that Orton, in my opinion, should have been suspended for being a dick and an asshole. And because you had a bunch of guys on medical suspension or drug suspension, that was not the case. And I felt like giving him the title was, while probably the right thing, was also not the right thing to the guys in the back, because there were probably guys who were more deserving, who were better guys as far as morale went, and he was not one of them. So that is why I would say that. It has nothing to do with his talent, it has nothing to do with if I think he's a good performer. It just had more to do with that sort of thing. And, that's why. If things had been differently, he probably would have been suspended. And because they were already lacking a lot of guys because of drug suspensions, that was not the case. And it had more to do with that. So there you go. What do you think the WWE needs to do in order to bring more credibility to the tag team and Intercontinental Division? I would say, for tag teams, have actual tag teams that stay together and aren't used. Don't use the tag team division like they're using to basically propel one guy. They're basically using it right now to propel Morrison, listen to me, Morrison, for no reason. Other than to propel him. They're using the entire division for that, and that's not what it should be used for. To me, it needs to be used for either guys who you don't have anything really to do with, or guys who are coming up and you're trying to teach them how to kind of go and try to first get them over. I think that's how you use it. You have to have longer matches. You have to have better matches. Tag matches should be booked differently than the regular matches. They should be a little bit more fast-paced, in my opinion, even the WWE, as guys, aren't in there as long. So they should be a little bit more fast, a little bit more action in those matches. That would be the first thing I would say. And actual tag teams, actual, not just two guys thrown together, but actual tag teams that stay together for a long time. That would be one. Intercontinental Division, pretty much the same way. I would say one of the first things you have to do is you have to get rid of the U.S. belt and bring in either a TV belt or just complete, or unify the U.S. and Intercontinental. I've said this before, and put them on one brand, and then put the tag team champions on another brand. I think that would work, and use the tag team champions basic belts as secondary belts to whichever brand on the other brand. I think that would be the best way to do it, and would give it a little bit more meaning to both belts that way as well. But I think you just have to do the same thing. Give them longer matches. Actually give them time on TV for the feuds that they are in, and I think it would work better. I think that's the problem, is you're not giving them enough time to really show what they can do. So, there you go. How old were you when you realized wrestling is a work? I was probably, I think I was 8 or 9, and that was more because my parents set me down and told me. It was. And then, what about when you began to understand how the wrestling business worked? That was probably when I was 13, 14, probably 13, 14 or 15 probably. And you have to remember that was well before the internet, so I didn't have the internet or anything like that, but just watching it as much as I did, and I watched a lot of stuff. I watched, I guess at that point it had been WCW, WWF, I think, was World Class still on? I don't think World Class was still on. I can't remember if I can't remember what was all on ESPN at the time. And then of course the local stuff as well. And you could just start kind of getting kind of an idea of, okay, this guy, kind of, okay, this guy's going to go over this guy, and the storylines I kind of always followed because I was always pretty creative in my own little way, and so that part didn't bother me too much. I was always into comic books, and I was always into, you know, coming up with my own comic book stories, and very much I would say that's very similar to the WWE and WCW in some regards as far as storylines go. So I kind of got that part of it. But as far as how, you know, it worked to that extent as far as, you know, storylines and the entertainment part, it's probably about then. Now, as far as moves and how guys went about doing that, that wasn't until I was probably 17, 18 probably, yeah, but maybe 16. I probably, because then you start like doing moves and you start having a better understanding of how things work. Even though I was doing that when I was probably 8 or 9 too, but and you kind of understand how it worked then. But I probably didn't really have a grasp of it until probably about then. So there you go. Who was your favorite wrestler to hold the ROH World Title? That would have been Samoa Joe, which probably doesn't surprise a lot of people. Do you think that when Nigel finally loses the belt, should it be to Aries or Danielson to make them a 2-time champions, or should it be to a first-time champ such as Tyler Black or someone else? Who would you like a return of the pure title? Would you like the return of the pure title, or do you feel the FIP title is inadequate as a secondary title? The FIP, I don't know if they're going to keep using the FIP title as a secondary title, because with Cade gone, the kind of connection between FIP and ROH isn't there as much, so that might not be there. I would love to see the pure title come back, because even though Gabe kind of felt it ran its course, I know some people feel like, I thought that it was a good secondary title because it had its own rules to it, and because it had its own rules, it made it a different title than the world title. So I thought that worked, and I would love to see that. I think that was a good idea. As far as who he should lose to, honestly, I think he should lose on the first TV taping to Danielson. I think that would be, because that's the guy that you can pretty much build your company around, I think. If not that, then I would say Tyler Black. But if that's the case, then you need to wait a while, because you need to build up Tyler Black. As they did announce when the TV tapings were going to be, which apparently will be at the beginning of March, and that is groovy. So at the old ECW arena, which is even more groovy, I think is a great and wonderful idea. So there we go there. Hey, Truth, do you think Owen Hart will be inducted into the Hall of Fame within the next 10 years or so? I would imagine so. It'll probably be some, if they ever do a WrestleMania back in Canada, I would imagine that would be the case. Or if they did one close to Canada, I would imagine that would be the case too, that they would induct him for various reasons. So there you go. Let's see. Have you ever watched IWA Texas ACW show, or will you ever attend one? Yes, I have seen an IWA Texas show. I think it was their first show. They had Hernandez and they had Hernandez, Necro Butcher. I think they had some of the IWA Mid-South guys there as well. It was an okay show. There wasn't a lot of people there, but it was an okay show. So there might have been their second show, but I think it was their first show that I went to. So regarding a TNA pay-per-view, he's talking about a TNA pay-per-view in the UK. What if they went to the Rebellion Insurrection route and made the pay-per-view live that way, such as just a UK-owned pay-per-view? I think that would be a good idea. If you wanted to do it that way, I think that would work quite well. Let's see. I was looking through Meltzer's star ratings lists recently, and he gave -5 stars to 3 matches, one of which was a boxing match from WrestleMania 2 between Mr. T and Roddy Piper. He also gave -5 stars to Hogan versus Warrior from Halloween Havoc 98. Do these matches really deserve these ratings? What is your personal opinion on them? Mr. T versus Roddy Piper, you have to remember that was when? That was, he was fairly young, and I'm sure that's probably why he gave the ratings that he gave. He was very much, it was work rate. Let's face it, neither of those were work rates, so that's why I would imagine. if he went back and looked at them now, he probably would not give them the same rating. Hogan versus Warrior, I would imagine that came more from the fact that he was probably sick of WCW and did not like the angle, did not like the match. The match wasn't very good, to be honest. But that would be my opinion. I would imagine why he did it, though I cannot speak for him, so there is that as well. I think they're both horrible. I would say that. I wouldn't give. It would take a lot for me to give something negative stars, because I really would be against that. But oh well. Do you think ROH? Do you think if ROH started making teaser vids for their DVDs like they do their pay-per-views, it would help boost sales? It might. I mean, they put those on the DVDs itself because those are the people buy. I figure those are the people that they figure are buying the DVDs. So why not stick them on the DVDs? But it wouldn't hurt. I don't think it'd probably be a pretty good idea. So, hey Truthslayer, is there a reason why so many wrestling fans have never seen the work of one of the greatest wrestlers ever, Jimbo Takahashi? Yeah, there is. He first is Japanese, and second, he was big, in the late 80s, early 90s, really before the internet got big and before you had a big portion of wrestling fans were on the internet and would have heard of him. So that is the big reason why, because the only other time you would have heard of that is if you had, Pro Wrestling Illustrated or something like that, and they ran an article on him. Other than that, you really wouldn't know much about him because he's Japanese and in Japan, so that would be why. What do you think about WWE changing One Night Stand's name to Extreme Rules this year? Kind of stupid. I mean, they say that, it was because it wasn't, family friendly. Are the Extreme Rules matches family friendly? I don't think so. And I never looked at it like in the sexual context, I guess, of a one night stand. I always looked at it as like one final stand, something. I always looked at it like that. That's probably not exactly how they meant it. That's the way I always looked at it. It was like we have one night to make one last stand, and I think if they changed it to something like that, it would make a little bit more sense. That's the way I've always looked at the pay-per-view anyways, so there is that. If you think there could be one wrestler from the past who would strive into wrestling today, who would that person be? I think there's tons of guys. I don't think that wrestling has changed that much to where a lot of guys from the past wouldn't be great today. I mean, if you took Luthez, who was, arguably the best wrestler ever, and you brought him today, he probably still would be one of the biggest stars of today. I think that wrestling hasn't changed that much to that degree to where guys who were over then couldn't get over now. They probably wouldn't get over in the same way, but it would, I definitely feel that that's the way. You talk about how much you hate Mike Tenay and Don West as commentators, but in your opinion, what makes a good commentator? Someone who is entertaining, adds to the match, which neither of those guys do, and doesn't take away from the match, i.e. you're listening to them, they're being entertaining, and it's part of the match, and they're adding like a story element to the match to a degree. And also just someone that, just adds an entertainment value to the matches. I would say that would be the big thing. In your opinion, is it bad for wrestling promotions to treat certain pay-per-views as throwaway or transitional pay-per-views, and do you think that hurts the bottom line? I don't know if it hurts the bottom line, but I do think it is a bad thing. I think if you, in your mind, and I understand there's reasons why you have throwaway pay-per-views that don't fall into this because guys are hurt or there's reasons outside of what I'm about to say, so that they don't count. But if you have one of these shows and the year going in, well, this is going to be, if you know in your mind, we can only put on 9 pay-per-views, they're going to be quality pay-per-views, and we're going to have 3 pay-per-views that are throwaways or transitional pay-per-views and won't matter as much. If you have that mindset, then guess what? You need to get rid of 3 pay-per-views and you need to find something else to do for those 3 shows, either a live TV event or something else, because you're basically, I think that would be better for your company than putting on a pay-per-view that might just piss off a fan or might do something else. So that's my thoughts on it. Now, of course, you have throwaway and transitional pay-per-views for other reasons than that, such as guys get hurt, stuff happens. Stuff happens, and you get to a point where you get up to maybe a month before, and you realize, okay, this pay-per-view isn't going to be anything. Let's get rid of it. So, I would say that would be the point. Okay, let's see. The lack of charismatic managers like Bobby Heenan or great interviewers like Gene Okerlund is one of the problems wrestling has today. Where specifically do you think people like these guys could make a difference, and are there any people you could see taking up these roles? I think there's lots of guys. I mean, you look at Larry Sweeney. I mean, Larry Sweeney he's like today's reincarnation of Bobby Heenan. And there's lots of guys like that. I think that there's definitely a need for them because Gene Okerlund was good at getting guys through interviews who may not have been good on interviews. I mean, that's one of the things Gene Okerlund was good at. Same thing with Bobby Heenan. And I think that it does hurt the industry when you don't have guys like that, because you definitely have guys who are talented in the ring who might not be the most talented guys on the mic, and you stick them with a guy like Bobby Heenan or Larry Sweeney, and it works. And because you have this guy talking and you have the other guy just sitting there looking mean and menacing, particularly if it's a heel. So it definitely helps. I also think that it has hurt the business in a lot of ways, because look at the guys, not like Bobby Heenan, but look at Paul Heyman, look at Paul Heyman and now I can't think of his name, Jim Cornette. And look at Jim Cornette. Look at all of those types of guys who wound up being going creative, who, you're basically cutting out of the equation now, because if those guys were, let's say, in their 20s today, it would probably be almost impossible for them to get in the business. And that is a huge problem I don't hear a lot of people ever talk about, but that's a big problem, I think, in the business, that there are not places for guys who might be managers or might be more on the creative end to really get a start. And I think that's a huge problem. So there you go. Hey, Truthslayer, I got a question regarding ROH that you have touched base on how the fans have been crapping all over the Adam Pearce shows recently, but this question is more specific. When ROH was taping its Cage Collision, many of the fans on the message board started calling crap right away. My question is, have the ROH fans always been so complacent, especially when they read the live reports before the DVD pay-per-view even comes out, or do they form these opinions before the shows? I will tell you, I think that as of recently, I think that they have been forming. I don't think Adam Pearce could do anything that they're going to like. That's the God honest truth. Unless it is an exact copy of what Gabe was doing, they're not going to like it. And I don't think that is fair. I don't think it's right. I have bitched about it. I have bitched about it on the forums, and other people have bitched about it as well, because I will be honest, I think a lot of the people that are crapping all over the Adam Pearce stuff haven't seen it, and have no plans on seeing it, or are just going to crap on it because it's different, and have not seen it. I've seen people complain about the fact that now on the undercards there aren't, 6 non-finishes in a match, which people have been complaining about for years, that there had been too many non-finishes. Basically, guys kicking out of, finishing moves over and over and over and over again on the undercard. You're not talking about a main event. You're not talking about a co-main event or even the third card from the main event. A featured match. You're not even talking about a featured match. You're talking about a card, like a thing on the undercard, which probably didn't deserve it. So, I think that a lot of these people just are bitch to bitch, to be honest. I don't think they've seen the product. And I firmly believe they haven't seen the product. They have no intention of seeing the product, but because it's different, they're not going to like it. Which, it's what it is. I mean, I'll be honest. I read the spoilers for Cage Collision. It didn't, make me jump up for joy. I don't think it looked like a bad show. I've seen enough stuff from it that said it was a good show. Which, I mean, let's face it. If you look at the first run of pay-per-views, I believe it was Rising Above last year. Most people thought it was a pretty weak pay-per-view from Ring of Honor standards. This looks like it was a fairly weak pay-per-view as well. and I don't think people are also, there's lots to it. People are comparing stuff that just makes me my head explode, because if you look at everything Gabe booked after Death Before Dishonor, the only two shows that were, in my opinion, any good were the Japanese shows, and I would say those were good not because of his booking, but more to do with the fact that he had, all of this talent, all this Japanese talent that he was able to throw out there and basically have good matches with, not because of the booking stuff. And then when he comes back to the U.S., Glory by Honor was not a good show, was very underwhelming, particularly for a major show. The two LAX shows were not very good, in my opinion, at all. And then you look at when Adam Pearce takes over, the two Canadian shows were very good, in my opinion, to great. Escalation was a weak show. I'll be honest, was a weak show. But I thought Rising Above was a great show. At least on pay-per-view, it was a great show. And we didn't even get what was supposed to be the best match. What was supposed to be the best match of the show. So there was that. That'll be on the DVD. The St. Louis show wasn't a great show, but it was a good show. And the Memphis show, I felt, was a very good show. Not a great show, but it was a very good show. And then I haven't seen All-Star Week, or I haven't seen what is it? All-Star Extravaganza. I haven't seen that yet. But then you have Final Battle, which was said to be an amazing show, and people just are crapping on it to crap on it because it's different. And it is what it is. I've talked about it before, and I definitely feel people are just crapping on it because it's different. They're not giving it a chance, and I think it's hurting the product. I think them crapping on the product is hurting the product more than the product is actually bad, because it's not bad. It's just different. But anyways, hey Truthslayer, have you ever watched Bret Hart Wrestling with Shadows movie? And if you did, what did you think about it? I thought it was very good. I don't think it's as good as Beyond the Mat, but I do think it's a very good documentary. It was very good just because of everything that's involved with it. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but if you haven't seen it, I would recommend checking it out. It's a very good, very good documentary. So I would say that. With that, I'm out. Everyone have a good one, and I am out of here.